guys, welcome to the Worship Server. Thank you so much for tuning in. We appreciate your time and attention as whatever you're doing. We appreciate you tuning in and listening to us. My name is Blaise Nelson, and I'm with my co-host Travis Swan. This
Hello.
is the Worship Server podcast, if I haven't said that already. But Travis and I are just two guys that are heavily involved in worship music in our churches. We are passionate about it. We don't have all the answers, but we both think it's valuable to have discussions around this stuff and just to remind each other and to spur each other on towards love and good deeds in our ministry. And that's our hope here. So if you like what's going on, give us a 5-star review on whatever platform you're listening. You know, all those podcasty things I'm supposed to say. Subscribe, do all that. And we also have a Discord channel that we would love to have conversations with you. If you have thoughts on this or would like to add anything to this conversation, we'd love to engage with you in that. And that's going to be linked in the show description below. So with all that out of the way, Travis, what are we doing today?
We're going to talk about worship, strangely enough, on a worship podcast. So you might think that's a little bit broad, but I think the reality is there's some nuance we want to flesh out. I mean, if you've heard people say about a church service, you know, worship begins at 10:30 and then the teaching is at 11, and that's the wrong paradigm. It's the wrong paradigm. What they're referring to is the music section and the teaching section of a worship service. So we want to talk today about what is worship. What are we doing corporately when we sing together? What is the point of it? All these words that maybe go in one ear and out the other, if you've been around the church for a long time, they can become kind of meaningless. So are you coming to worship today? I liked worship today. Worship was really good. Like, what does that mean? And then we'll probably talk about music. What is the role of music in worship? Emotion, expression, things like that. So I think that's where we're going.
Yeah, I think this is one of those topics that we could probably do an annual episode on. Just, it's so easy to forget. It's so easy to cheapen what we do and what we're doing and what this idea of worship is. I think
Yes.
I find myself, I was even in a conversation with somebody recently, and I was talking about the worship service, the worship music as part of service. And he corrected me and was like, is that what worship is? And I was like, yeah. But I think it's important, you know, we so often do that, and we so often forget that this isn't just this musical expression that we get the opportunity to do, but it's something so much more that goes way beyond that. So I think a good spot to start is to just define it. What is worship? For me, I think a real basic definition of worship is what we put our thoughts or attentions to, what we hold as higher than ourselves. I've heard it said, we've all heard it said that, you know, what we worship is where we spend our time, our money, our resources, our efforts. And I think if you look at the average person's life, if you look at my life, based on those criteria, there's a lot of things that I, maybe a little W, I don't think that's actually a thing, but little W worship. But what we're doing for worship music is big W worship, where it's the heartbeat of who we are turning our affection to and what we are giving ourselves to.
Yeah.
And I think in Christian circles and ideally in what we're doing in music, that should be, and in our lives, that should be God and our Creator.
Yeah. So basically on the high level, worship is acknowledging that someone or something is greater. It's worth more than anything else in your life. And then maybe when you get into the nitty gritty of that, it's whatever you end up valuing the most. Like what your desire, like your heart longs for the most, and what you want to express to the people around you the most because you have affection for it.
Yeah.
I would say that. There's probably some other nuance in there. You know, you can talk about the little W. Like, I'm very, very enthusiastic about a lot of things. I'm not necessarily worshiping them. But when something takes the place of God as my chief affection, you know, God has a word for that. It's idolatry. I was listening to a testimony of a guy this morning who, before he was a believer, he was saying that he would make fun of Christians because they needed a crutch to get along in life. And as his life went on as an atheist, he was realizing that he was using crutches. They were just alcohol and sex and just things that were destroying him. And he finally came, when in his conversion, he finally came to understand those were his things he was worshiping, and they were his crutches. And he finally let go and realized no, the only thing worthy of putting in this place in my life, this type of value, this type of desire is God. That was a great, great testimony. But that just came to mind. I was listening to that this morning, and the word he kept using was idolatry, idolatry, idolatry. So you worship anything other than God. That's the greatest commandment. It's you worship God with all your heart, your soul, your mind, and your strength. Not something else.
I think there's something really innate in humans to worship something. And, I think we like to think that we're intellectual beings that don't need something higher, we like to be self-sustaining, self-sufficient. But even in that, we're putting ourselves on that pedestal and worshiping ourselves. And I think that's a really common source of idolatry in at least the American church today. I think in all cultures, across all cultures. But we don't get a pass. We don't get to not worship something. I think whether it's a football team or band or credit card, money, career, sports, we worship all kinds of things, and we're programmed to that. But what we're looking to sustain, I think for us, we know what that answer is, but it's so easy to get those things confused or to forget. Even that quiet time thought I shared in our last recording, where I was talking about just the Isaiah, and he was, God talks about that piece of wood that these idol makers were using half of it to warm themselves and the other half to worship, and just how natural that is for us to worship something and to turn our eyes to something.
Mm-hmm.
So
yes. Yeah, it totally is. So one of the key pivotal moments for me in understanding worship, actually, I think I was in middle school or high school. We were on a trip. My family was, but if you missed the first episode, we were touring around the U.S. As professional musicians, and I ended up being in hotels a lot. And so in hotels, I would click on the TV. And back in the day when VH1 actually played music, I remember they were playing Ed Sullivan Show reruns. And they had an old black and white one from the very first time the Beatles were on. And I don't know if you have seen that, but the word worship immediately became clear to me as I was watching it. Now, not worship of God, obviously, but the Beatles come on, and he's like, hey, the Beatles, and then they start playing, and immediately you can't really hear what they're singing because all of the girls in the audience are screaming. And it pans to the audience, and they are like hands up and crying and just completely immersed in worship of the Beatles. It's complete adoration. Like the desire of their heart was for these four men from England. And I remember about halfway through, I just had an epiphany. This is how we're supposed to feel about God. If God were to physically walk in the room right now, I should just lose it in a good way.
Not to ask you to diagnose Beatlemania, but what is that in us? You know what I mean? Like, it's just such an intense response for, and I think there was, I don't want to, please do not hear me diss the Beatles in any way, shape, or form. But I don't have that response listening to him now. And I think they were maybe at this critical moment where, they were doing something new. But it's amazing that there was that significant response. Is it the newness? Is it just this love for what they're doing? Is it the music? We didn't plan to talk about this, but I'm just curious,
we didn't.
What are your thoughts on that?
Definitely on the spot. I mean,
what causes that?
I think it was a John Calvin way back in the day. He said the heart is an idol factory. I don't agree with all of his theological stances or some of his life, but that doesn't negate what he said. I always have to give that disclaimer. It's like if I quote a theologian or someone from history, it doesn't necessarily mean I adhere to all of their theological stances or their lifestyle. Anyway, he's probably a good guy. I don't know. But the heart is an idol factory. I just think we are created to find our joy and our life in God. And as soon as the fall happens, that separation where we're designed to be in the midst of the most perfect relationship imaginable. That's perfectly fulfilling and satisfying and full of energy and joy and acceptance and compassion, like everything you could want in a relationship with another person. Like the ontological nature of God himself from before the foundation of time is love. That's the foundation of everything. It's love. And it's Father, Son, and Holy Spirit existing in perfect harmony for all of eternity past. And in this moment of creation where God just decides, I want to bring others into this. And Adam and Eve are created. And that separation that happened because of sin at the fall just ripped that to shreds. And I think post-fall, we're just simply trying to make our way back to the Garden of Eden as human beings, whether we believe in God or not, whether we even admit that we believe in God or not. It's like a hole in our heart, knowing we're made for something more than what we're experiencing and what the humans around us are even able to deliver. And I think that makes us start gravitating to, we use the word idolatry, gravitating to things that we feel like will fill that space, whether that's a relationship or it's hero worship or it's a feeling of, a drug or alcohol or the high of a really great rock concert. I just think we're made to be filled with the joy and delight of the presence of God. And when we don't have that, we will immediately turn to whatever else is the closest substitute.
Why doesn't that happen in our worship services? So we have this Beatlemania is just kind of an interesting thing. And I'm going somewhere. I'm not like trying to string you along. I think it's a good conversation to have, especially, I hear these. I don't think I'm as emotional of a person. I don't have these outward bursts of emotions normally.
Yeah.
And I think also we like to say that about ourselves too. We like to stunt our emotions and to caveat them and all this stuff, disclaim them.
Yep.
But I've had moments in worship services where I've had this really strong emotional response. We're saying that we're designed for this. We're designed to worship something, and when that's aligned, why isn't lightning striking every single time I'm worshiping the right thing and I'm aligned? And you know what I mean? Why don't I have constant Beatlemania?
Right.
Or
so
I guess
are you asking why don't I feel it all the time? And why don't we, the church, collectively feel it during every worship service?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say, post-fall, our desires are polluted and divided. And even when we get close to God, there's going to be a bit of a contest happening in our affections, I think. But I would also say that I don't know that ecstatic joy is always the right thing. I think in the context of relationship and that perfect love relationship of God that we're invited into, I don't know that an ecstatic emotional high is the actual goal. I think that's the maybe occasional result. But I think being content, there are obviously lots of different feelings involved. We're going to have to deal with all kinds of stuff in us as we come into a worship service. And sometimes that's going to be mourning. Sometimes it's going to be I'm affected by the person next to me or someone else that I know of that's suffering. And I'm, in that space where I'm pleading with God. So I don't know that direct end result goal of a high feeling is necessarily our thing. So all analogies break down, and maybe Beatlemania isn't like the perfect thing. I was just using that kind of as an example of this is an end result of I'm just going to be all consumed by this other thing. I think we're built to do that. But it's supposed to be God and not Paul McCartney.
For sure. I think
Yeah.
I think what's interesting, I don't know if you ever heard Steel Crosswhite's analogy of the fireworks versus the fire.
Yes. I loved it. Yeah. Oh yeah.
So I'm going to take it out of context a little bit.
Recap it real quick.
We're hoping to have him on the show at some point. But we have a mutual friend named Steele who does worship music, and he's a great guy. And he was talking about his testimony, and he was talking about how he has a tendency to chase fireworks and these really exciting experiences, and he found them in a lot of different places of this like really explosive moment of joy or high emotion.
Yeah.
He was saying with Christ, the drugs and the alcohol and those experiences are these fireworks that he gets to watch, and they're exciting. But he was saying his relationship with Christ is it's like watching a bonfire. And what's interesting is in the firework analogy, it's exciting, it's loud, it's quick, it's amazing. It's not sustaining. You can't warm yourself you can't cook over a firework.
Yeah.
I mean, you could probably try. It probably would go.
You could try
really poorly. But I
There's
think
not enough heat. It's just smoke.
when you look at relationships, even like my relationship with my wife, when you're early on in dating and pre-marriage, there's a lot of fireworks that happen, and you're excited to be together, and you're excited to be around each other, and the physical attraction is intense. And then once you're married, you still have a lot of those same emotions, but it's a lot more sustaining. And it wouldn't be appropriate. Maybe your relationship is like this, Travis. Mine is not, but it wouldn't be appropriate to have fireworks all the time, constantly, because that's not what it's.
Yeah, maybe when we're fighting,
just
we have fireworks.
Yeah. It just shifts.
That's a different kind. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
Derailing this.
But just the sustaining of, man, what when we're together, it's more like a bonfire. We're sustaining to each other. There's warmth. There's a glow. And the reason I wanted to dig into that is because I think what can happen a lot in our churches is that we're trying to create those fireworks. We're trying to capture that lightning in a bottle. We're trying to have Beatlemania. We want people throwing their hands up and falling on their face. We want all these like emotional responses that we want the fireworks. And what I wanted to throw a monkey wrench in there is I think just our relationship with God. I love that picture, but just this idea of like, man, a sustaining fire. And we'll get into that. I don't want to jump headlong into that yet, but just as we come together in our music, is our music more seeking the fireworks, or is it seeking to be warmth and to be with each other?
Right. Right.
So
yeah, I mean, maybe we should talk a little bit about emotion, because we all will find ourselves in moments where we're having to lead worship while we're not feeling it. And then are you going to be fake? I don't know. I think, I don't know, with a Psalm 131, is it that came to mind? Oh, it was just like, my heart is not lifted up. My eyes are not raised too high. I don't occupy myself with things too great and too marvelous for me. That was the verse that came to mind, because the context there is he says, I've quieted and calmed my soul. And like a weaned child with its mother, that's my soul within me. And sometimes I think our posture of worship before God is going to be quiet. It's going to be calm. It's not going to be these high, lofty, ecstatic moments. And I think our modern worship industry that we've thus far been fairly critical of on this podcast, though we love a lot of the music that's being created, I've had a concern for quite a while, actually, that we're actually giving people the wrong perspective of what they're supposed to be expecting every single week when they come to church. If they are singing songs that are singing words of ecstasy, like what we're describing, the fireworks, the ecstatic experiences, the joy, and yet maybe week after week, maybe they're in a dark night of the soul, maybe they're physically suffering, maybe they're facilitating relational conflict, all the human things that we're dealing with, maybe their finances are out of whack, maybe they're overworked, whatever it is. And then we come in and they're like, sing like never before, oh my soul, and they're like, I mean, honestly, can I sing like never before right now? Like if I did that every single week, I just keep getting louder and louder. And like, it's irrational, Matt Redman. Why'd you write that lyric?
Yeah.
Sorry,
You're
I
only
don't have
supposed to do the
anything
song
against
once.
10,000 Reasons. Yeah, and in that, I'm like 10,000 Reasons. Do I have 10,000? I always go into these weird modes when I'm singing songs like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Like I can think of 1, 2, 3. Like if I'm going to quantify them, maybe up to 7 is all I'm capable of right now. You know.
Yeah, right in this moment.
But
Yep.
I think we're programming a whole culture of church with this industry that you should expect an ecstatic experience every single week. And really, it's not like that. It's like you described. Maybe it's not even a bonfire. Maybe it's just a little fire in your stove that you build your life around.
Mm.
You know, it warms your house. You cook your food over it. It gives you some light in the darkness. And it's steady and it's calm and it's, you know, you're that calmed, quieted soul. You know, the First Thessalonians guy who's endeavoring to live a quiet life and work with his hands. And I don't think there's any shame in a Sunday morning and expressing yourself that way, and maybe even not singing sometimes. I think that's okay. So I wonder if there's a whole bunch of people who actually walk into a church service with a false idea of what's supposed to happen when you worship and what's supposed to happen when you encounter the living God. And through our lyrics and through our desire as musicians to create experiences, because we all feel things with music, we've given people an improper expectation of what they're supposed to encounter. And maybe they'll feel disillusioned when they leave, or they might feel guilty. You know, I think it's actually led to some people even deconstructing their faith because I'm like, I've never felt it. But their measure of description of feeling it is some really upbeat, crazy song that, you know, everybody's got their hands up during. They're just like, I'm just not there. When in fact, maybe their relationship with God could be great. There's just the expression isn't quite the same every single week. So we can't build ecstasy every single week. It's never going to, you just can't do that. Really following God sometimes is a very mundane and even painful thing. And that's not always going to sound like ecstasy on a Sunday morning. I don't, what do you think about that? Like, how do you approach it when you're not feeling it?
That's an interesting question. Nothing came to my mind immediately. Like, I think when I'm not feeling it, I think it forces me, and this is where I wanted to go kind of next in our conversation. So obviously we're worshiping God. That's, you know, and it's not just this moment on Sunday morning.
Yeah. Yep.
What does that look like for the worship leader to, and I've used the term live a life of worship with my group. And
it's like Romans 12:1,
keep
present yourselves as living sacrifices. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what does that mean to worship individually, you know, the rest of the 6.8 part of the week, you know, that's not the right math, but 90% rest of the week that you're not actually singing on stage. And when I'm not feeling it, I think that's where it's important for me to, I have two thoughts on this. One is I think it's important for me to slow down and evaluate where my personal walk is and to be honest and okay with where I'm at too. Because life is built of a lot of different seasons. And I think when you start evaluating things based on your emotions, I think emotions are a phenomenal flag for things that you're believing. But you also still have to base truth. You have to try the goal is to try to base your reality on truth, right? And so I love this analogy. I think obviously the Bible uses this language a lot, but just this idea of being married, you know, if I don't feel head over heels or completely Twitter-pated with my wife, do I take a step back and think, man, I'm in crisis? Or do I think, oh, it's been an extremely busy day. I'm tired. I didn't sleep super well last night. And obviously there's a point where that becomes, it'd be funny if after this conversation, you're like, dude, you need to fix your relationship with your wife. That's not where I expect us to go. But I think to recognize that there's a lot of dynamics in life, and to be searching for this high or to be defining things based on how I'm feeling, often I think it's a good indicator of what I'm believing, but I don't think it's a good indicator of how things are actually going, because I can be a little manic. I can get super discouraged really, really quickly. Earlier this week, I felt totally overwhelmed and felt like I had all these tasks that I was behind on and that I could never get ahead. And it's Thursday that we're recording, and I feel so much better because these emotions were true, and I was experiencing them, but it wasn't necessarily a reality of exactly what I was facing. And I think to not base your, I think it should come into the equation, but to not base your evaluation of your relationship with God based solely on these emotions or solely on the fireworks, but say, okay, take a step back. Am I being faithful in my quiet times? Am I worshiping God in how I'm living and how I'm treating my wife and how I'm treating my kids? Am I worshiping God in my finances? Am I worshiping God in the way that I'm managing my house? All these things, and evaluate from that spot, and then also look at this emotion and say, okay, what's going on here?
Yeah.
Am I experiencing, I don't know if you've heard the HALT. Am I hungry, angry, lonely, or tired?
Yes.
And
Yep.
if it's none of those, then keep going.
Yeah.
Keep evaluating.
Yeah. Eat something, calm down, take a nap.
Yep. Totally.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, this is related. It's actually one of my favorite, there's so many favorite things that I have about Jesus, but in the incarnation, where God, prior to that, we could rightly probably say, you sit up there and you don't understand what it's like to be hungry and crave food, what it's like to be so tired your eyes just close in sleep, what it feels like. And so the incarnation happens, and Jesus comes in, and he becomes human, and he becomes like us in every way so he can empathize with us. And it's so amazing that God was able and willing to do that, so that he can relate. So is it Psalm 103 that talks about he knows our frame? Our Father knows that we're weak, and he has compassion on us.
Yep.
And I think that the playing out of that ultimately was in Jesus coming and being human and experiencing that physical pain and hunger and emotional, all of it, all the things. We're created in the image of God, but there's this human piece of it that God got to experience, and when Hebrews talks about Jesus being perfected by suffering, I really think that's mainly what it's talking about. He becomes the perfect advocate for us because he can fully relate to everything that we're going through. So you're talking about, Monday you don't feel this, and Tuesday you're stressed by this, and your body's feeling that, and you've done this exercise, your body's sore, you've got an injury or whatever it is. Our Father has compassion on us because he knows now exactly what that looks like. So it's just another thing to worship him for. But that's one of the things I was thinking about with emotion is like, maybe some of us just have to give ourselves a little bit of a break and just rest in the fact that God understands.
And I think to just enjoy, going back to Sunday morning, to enjoy the process of, maybe you're tired, maybe you're exhausted, but you can still enjoy the process of making music. You can still lift your eyes up. You can whisper quietly in your own heart. You can, I think the Lord is really welcoming to us, and has always been welcoming to us, and has always been extremely understanding to our spot. One of the things I love about the Pentateuch is when God is giving the law, twice in the law, the Lord edits it so that people can partake and be partners with him in the law. And we see that in they're going to go celebrate the Passover, and there's some people that are unclean for the Passover ceremony, and based on everything you've been reading, you're like, oh man, they're cooked. They're gone. Yep. And God's like, oh, it's fine, celebrate it next month. And I think that's the Lord's heart. He just wants us to come to him. And obviously there's holiness, and there's the posture of our hearts, and there's all this stuff. But I think if you're not experiencing lightning in a bottle currently, that's okay.
Right.
4th of July is around the corner.
Yeah. You probably will sometimes. But it's okay if you don't. That's not necessarily what we're going for in worship. Yeah. I think a couple of verses came to mind too. as far because the context here is we're talking about the non-Sunday, how do you prepare your heart? You mentioned quiet times, like the context of that would be like Hebrews 2, where it says, pay closer attention to what you've heard so you don't drift away from it. When I've read that, I think, pay closer attention. This is like in the Greek there, if you study it, it's like an astronomer studying the stars. So it's like nuanced, little tiny details, spending a whole bunch of time with it over and over again repeatedly. Pay closer attention to what you have heard so you don't drift away from it. And then the next verse is, how will you escape if you neglect such a great salvation? And so what I came away from that with is I need to preach the gospel to myself in a nuanced, detailed way, probably multiple times a day.
Yeah.
So that I don't drift. And what that does for me is I'm focusing on this great salvation, focusing on what Jesus has done for me. And that puts me in that place of gratitude and thankfulness. So in Ephesians, when Paul's telling the Ephesian church, to take all of your anxieties to the Lord in prayer, and then you have that transaction where it says, then the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. The peace in the midst of that we often forget is bring your anxieties, bring them with thankfulness. And then the peace of God will come in. And that gratitude, sometimes maybe the only thing you have to be grateful for that you can manage in your humanity is, wow, Jesus, I'm so glad you saved me. I actually have access to you right now. And you start there, and then suddenly it's like all of these things can be taken away, and that peace which transcends understanding will flood in, guard your heart, like it says. So that's kind of what I was thinking of, is throughout the week, are we just steeping in the greatness, the goodness of what the gospel has bought for us? And understanding it to the level where you leap out of bed in the morning not feeling condemnation because you haven't performed right, not feeling like you have to get to your quiet time in order to somehow make yourself acceptable, which I think maybe we inadvertently teach our kids when we schedule that too much. But instead you just rest in grace. Again, Hebrews, I keep going back to that, but you rest, you enter God's rest. What is that? That's the deep, satisfying rest of the soul. It's that weaned child I was talking about earlier, just resting.
Yeah.
Calm, quiet. And I don't have to perform anymore. Like the beauty of the gospel is I have access to that love in the Trinity fully, right now, no matter what. Done, one and done. Jesus did it once and for all. And he sat down at the right hand of the Father, and it's finished. And every single day, if I just immerse myself in that, it changes everything when I come together with the church on Sunday morning. And it's no longer performative. It's no longer me trying to conjure something up. It's just, I just simply am so grateful for what he's done for me.
I don't think I'm going to add anything to what you just said there. But just to expand it a little bit, to our faith is something that takes careful upkeep. Please don't take this out of context, but just this idea of like faith is kind of like a bonsai tree. You just kind of got to keep watering it, got to keep trimming it, got to keep being careful with it. And I think so often we just are like, okay, this thing happened, got the Spirit inside of me, I'm good to go. And then we like shove this thing in a corner. And obviously God, I think, does a lot of that sanctifying work and does a lot of things. But what I was looking up here is Philippians 2 says, so that my beloved, just as you have always obeyed, not as in my presence only, but now much more in my absence, work out your salvation with fear and trembling. And just this idea of like, we have a work to do in our salvation, and the Lord has done the work. He's died on the cross. He's made it for us. He's opened the way for us to come to God. But just like in any relationship, we have work to do still in this relationship as we grow closer, as we pursue holiness, as we, just like with your spouse, I don't mean to keep hammering this point home, but if I just totally hands up and, sweetie, we said I do at the altar and I don't know what you want from me, that's super dysfunctional. And I think we have that, you have to have faithful touch points. And then just to pull out too, I thought that idea on gratitude is huge. And I want to be careful because I don't think you should go out and worship nature. But there's something about going out in nature and looking up. And I love clouds, and I love big, huge cumulus clouds that are just massive and that look like some monster breathed them out, and they're just like floating in the air. And to look up at that and to see something so much bigger than myself, and to recognize that there's a God who formed that and who spoke that into existence. And you know, it's all this part of gratitude. I think a lot of the secular world is touching on this a lot in gratitude and in all these things, and they're finding out, wow, it's actually good to be thankful. It's actually good to you know, have a posture of thankfulness. And we're just now finding it out in psychology, but the Bible's been commanding it for thousands of years. And I think there is something really powerful as a worshiper, as a worship leader, to have a heart and a posture of thankfulness. And I think it's easy to look at natural things and be thankful for the handiwork there, but there's also handiwork that's been done in the horizontal, and my wife, with my kids. There's all kinds of things I can be thankful for. And if I have this posture of like, man, I am so blessed. And even when it doesn't feel like I'm blessed, I saw a quote from he's the guy that's getting fired at CBS, the night show host, Stephen Colbert.
Stephen Colbert, yeah.
But he said something like, what punishment from God is still not a gift? Or he had quoted that. And just, man, the Lord has been so good and so kind. And even in the moments, just to exist is such a gift, and not a gift in and of itself. The gift is nice, but man, that should point our eyes back to the giver. Yeah. The giver of all good things. And I think if we can practice that heart of just being really thankful, and I understand that too, coming from a spot where my life is pretty good right now, and I don't have any major crises on the horizon, but I know something's coming. And even in the middle of a crisis, I can still practice thankfulness, and I can still thank God for, man, the things that he's done in my life. And even if it comes down to just my salvation, what a blessing that I have the Spirit of the living God living inside of me, ministering, an advocate. It's just amazing. The riches that we have in Christ.
Yeah. The joy of the gospel isn't just forgiveness of sins. I think we make a mistake when we evangelize just that way. It's access to the presence of God. You know, so the psalmist in Psalm 16 is talking about the presence of God, you know, and it says there's pleasures forevermore at your right hand. You know, we're not into the presence of God for the sake of the pleasures forevermore. They're a byproduct of being in his presence. But that's what the gospel has, that's the message. The good news of the gospel is not just forgiveness. It's that forgiveness has given you a door you can step into where you then suddenly are in full right standing with a holy God that would otherwise rightly kill you in his presence. And that's just an amazing thing to be able to be there as a child of God and secure. You know, I don't think we've even begun to tap the full implications of what his presence is going to be like for us one day as we're there. Yeah. You know, but the truth is we have more access to it right now than I think we even allow ourselves to imagine. It's amazing. So, but I think just gratefulness for that is such a key factor in worship. You know, while you're talking there about just thankfulness and gratefulness and just everything that you have, it's like even our exhortations to sing, you know, so there's Colossians 3, is it 3:16, where you're supposed to let the word of Christ dwell in your heart richly. Dwell in you richly. Teaching and admonishing one another in all wisdom, singing psalms and hymns and spiritual songs with thankfulness in your hearts to God. Like, it's always with thankfulness, with gratitude. Like, bring your anxiety with gratitude. And it's, if you are not grateful, you're going to struggle on a Sunday morning. Yeah. You know, but I don't think God even despises when you show up and you're just that guy and you're like, I believe, help my unbelief right now. God, that's still faith. A smoldering wick
Yeah.
he will not put out. He does not despise that bruised reed. That little tiny bit of faith. He's like, that's great. Bring it.
Yeah.
So did we exhaust
Yeah.
this
And even,
particular topic?
I think so. I think we're getting there. Again, I love that mix of, in a culture that's very focused on anxiety, and rightfully so. I think people are anxious. I'm not discounting that at all, but just do not be anxious about anything, but in everything with prayer and thanksgiving, just what you quoted, just that's the call that we have in the midst of your anxiety, in the midst of not feeling it, in the midst of not doing well, with thankfulness.
Yeah.
Present your request to God, and the peace of God will dwell in you richly, man. What a blessing.
Yeah.
Okay. So transitioning, that's high level. I think what we have there, thankfulness, tending to your faith. Was there any other practical points that we're missing from that?
I just think just the desire of your
ones.
heart being pointed at God first. If the heart is an idol factory, I just have a recognition of that. Pay attention to that greatest commandment. You need to love God first.
And how do you cultivate that in your heart? Is that just what we've been talking about, or is that?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you feel it. Like, I am a feelings person. You were just describing yourself not being a feelings person, and then you talked about all the things you were feeling all week. So
I'm not saying I don't have them.
Yeah, no, I'm a fairly feelings motivated person, and honestly, just even right now, reminding myself of this great salvation and the access we have to the presence of God and an eternity with that delight forevermore. Man, I'm ready to go lead a worship set right now. I'm in.
Yeah.
Let's do it. I've prepared.
Sorry, there was one more thing I wanted to say on this, and then we can move on.
Yeah.
I love Judah and the Lion. Sorry. Their album Pep Talks came out at a time when I was going through a lot in my life, and a lot of that music spoke to me. And the most powerful song in that is The Best Is Yet to Come. The most powerful song, in my opinion, is The Best Is Yet to Come, where he has his mom recording a message saying what she thought of the song. And if you know anything of his story, his mom is one of those people that has caused a lot of pain in his life. And he's singing, I guess we're all broken. I guess we're all just hoping for more. You're not alone. And then, man, I remember I was on a plane just listening to it and just like sobbing at this song. The best is yet to come. The best is yet to come. The best is yet to come. And believer, the best, what I realized is in the midst of my brokenness and in the midst of our broken church, lifting up our voices, distracted and frustrated and in conflict and imperfect, we all have hope that the world does not have.
Yeah.
And it's good to be thankful. It's good to practice all those things. But man, we are a people of hope. And for us, for the believer, no matter what is happening, the best is always yet to come.
Yeah.
And what a what a blessing.
Yeah, it's
the
so
best
good.
Is always yet to come for us.
It's so good and it's so true. Yeah. Yeah. We should not lose track of that.
Okay, so going to where we all like sitting, our Sunday morning services. So that's kind of the midweek work. That's the personal. We can't lose sight of that. I think that's incredibly foundational. And if you're going to pick one or the other, you should pick the personal stuff, because I think the personal stuff is what's most important and what will bless your church more. But then why or how do we express that in, these 30 minutes that we come together as a church? What does that look like? What are we doing? What are we accomplishing there?
You mean just like with music in general together?
Yeah, with
sing?
music and just in general. What are we doing? Why is this being expressed that way?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think of that passage where the Spirit intercedes with groans that words cannot express. And it's not necessarily the context of music, but I do think that it maybe shines a little bit of a light into the nuance that is just the human and the complicated nature of us, just in terms of even understanding how to put to words what we're even feeling or going through in the moment. And I think a lot of times as we approach God with music, music has this ability to express what words can't express. Words, the music is going to maybe be similar to what those groans are. I think even the Spirit could intercede for us in the middle of us, groaning at this moment in a
Yeah.
song. Music, I think, affects us emotionally. It affects us. It gets our bodies moving. It's the thing Jesus can relate to. It's this human biology that music just affects. God created it
Yeah.
for us. I mean, the Bible is full of commands, particularly in the Psalms, to sing. And I think it's because it does something to our soul. It does something to our spirit. It focuses our attention. It can help us. It aids our memory. Like you can sing a lyric and remember the concept of the song in ways that you can't remember if someone just says it to you. Why is
Yeah.
that?
Yep.
It's because it's like getting into your experiential part of your humanity rather than just the theoretical. And I think one of the mistakes that people make if they try to separate these things out too much and say, well, music, it's all manipulation and you're manipulating the emotions. And, I think you have to understand like that may be more of a Gnostic point of view that's related to like Plato and the Greeks and their idea that we should be disembodied spirits from the material. So spirit is like good and the material is bad, and we have to watch out for all of those material things. And that's again one of the things I love about the incarnation is that the Spirit became flesh and is still, I mean, Jesus has a body right now. That's ridiculous to think about, God having a physical body right now somewhere. We're not disembodied spirits floating around. Our ideal is not separating ourselves from our bodies. In the end, in the new heaven and new earth, we're going to have bodies. And so God made us to worship him with heart, soul, mind, and strength. Like you could nuance each one of those and come up with what is the biological thing that's affecting my strength and my mind and my soul today. And I think music it's just a tool to help us in that.
There's a lot of just experiential anecdotes I can say. Even if I say stuck on a Band-Aid, it draws something to your mind. You know what that is.
No, thank you.
And it's probably going to be in your head for the next 20 hours or so.
Gross.
But yeah, I think there's something really important about music, that it's this gift that we have, and you can sing a lyric that will stick with people all week. Whereas and maybe I just wasn't paying enough attention, but I can't tell you the 3 main points from our sermon on Sunday. And so there's something about music and something about the way that it engages with us. I think physiologically, I've heard it said, I'm no physiologist or whoever studies that. But it engages the creative side of our brains, and often it can bypass the critical part of our brains as well. So we're able to kind of sit there and listen to this truth being spoken to us. And there's something about music where our criticism, the critical part of our brain, is less engaged and we're less resistant to it. And it can just speak to us in ways that nothing else can. And obviously there's I think not a warning, but just an acknowledgement that's why we need to be careful on what we're doing, because we have this amazing, powerful tool that God has given us.
Yep.
I think there's something about singing together. I think about Jehoshaphat leading his troops to battle to fight 3 armies that he had no chance of winning. And who he sticks out in the front is the singers. And I don't know about you, but I would not prefer to be in that spot, but he sees value in that. My dad loves Arctic exploration and Arctic stories, and the story of the Endurance. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but if you have not, go look it up.
It's amazing. Is that
Shackleton? Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a brutal story.
Shackleton has all his guys go down. I think it was 1 pound that they're allowed. And to show, Shackleton was an amazing leader, to show what he had to do, he pulled out, I think it was a Bible that the Queen of England had given him, and he pulled out 1 page and threw the Bible on the pile of "this needs to stay." And as he's having these guys dump all their possessions on the ice to leave so that they can survive, and they all survived, he had one guy keep his banjo because he knew that music was going to do something spiritually. He knew that it was going to do something emotionally that nothing else would.
Yeah. Yes.
And so it's just, it's amazing. I think we've been given this
incredible.
gift to do something. And
Yeah.
even as, you know, there's all kinds of directions you can go in this, even just as like a small group, as, hey, we're a group of people sitting down with all these different age groups. In our church, we play with a lot of youth, and my band, I love it. It's huge age range. Sorry for the old guys in my band, but you know, we have a
No,
40,
I love
50 year
That's
age
so
range
good.
in our church, and they're doing something practically together, you know? So just, I think what we do in our music is, it's this amazing gift that God has had. There's one other anecdote that I want to share. We had a family that went through a tremendous loss in our church, and he was in a meeting about a year later, and one of the things that he said in that meeting was he thanked the church for singing on his behalf. And if you've not picked up the book Sing by the Gettys, Kristen, and I don't remember his name, it's an amazing book.
Keith?
But yeah, probably.
I have it. Yes.
But you know, he had just gone through probably the worst thing that he's ever experienced. Definitively the worst thing that he's ever experienced. And there were many times where he was sitting in our services, and I know he was unable to sing the words because it was too raw. It was too close to home. He didn't believe them in the moment.
Yeah.
And the church singing those words on his behalf was healing to his soul.
Yep.
And I think as a church, what we're trying to do is we're trying to all come together, and just real basically, we're just trying to sing, and we're trying to remind each other, and we're trying to spur each other on towards, man, let's slow down here in the middle of our week, in the middle of our lives that are crazy and insane. Let us slow down and just listen to what God has to say. And let me sing on behalf of this brother that cannot sing. Let me sing truth that he doesn't believe right now, and let me do it on his behalf. And so there's a lot of amazing things that happen in worship. Those are kind of the first worship music in the worship service, you know. Got to disclaim it.
Yes.
It is sad that we don't have a better word for it, but in the liturgy of our church, I think there's some amazing things that happen there.
Yeah. We have over the years on Sunday mornings, every once in a while, we just do a music and prayer Sunday where we don't have a teaching. And initially, someone was proposing we call this a worship and prayer Sunday. And I was like, no. Prayer is worship too. This is a worship service that contains music and prayer. So we just call them music and prayer Sundays. But what you were just talking about, I mean, it really, that captures a really good idea that when I'm coming to the service, like I am coming to receive. But do I have in my head as I show up that I'm actually coming to give as well? So in that Colossians verse that we quoted out of Colossians 3, where we're supposed to admonish one another, and it says we're supposed to sing psalms and hymns and spiritual songs. Like there's a reason we're supposed to do that for one another. And that you shared that story, that is a beautiful picture of the why, at least part of the why, and why we would do that. And it is singing there. Note that we're teaching and admonishing, but it also says singing.
And we need to be careful as worship leaders that we're facilitators in that, but we're not the ones that are giving. We often give a lot of ourselves, a lot of time, a lot of effort, but it's what and I hesitate to use this word, but the magic of worship, what God has designed in us is for the church to come together and collectively sing. And that spark of that, there's something powerful in there that's way beyond Beatlemania. It's way beyond all of these, sports teams and all these things that we can get excited about. There is something that God has designed, I believe, that is divine, that happens when his church comes together and sings his praises.
Yeah.
Paul and Silas in the jail. That also just
love that
too.
Oh man. Yeah. When they're in Philippi. That's so good.
Yeah.
That's so good. And then I think the jailer is Jairus, and I mean, he's like the first church leader. The church starts meeting with his family because his family is the one that's saved. It's just
Yeah.
so good.
And it was enough to impact the other prisoners to stay after. They knew something was different just by them
Yeah.
singing.
Yeah.
Paul wasn't preaching.
Yeah. So another factor I think that you're bringing up there that I think we have in maybe a modern challenge of in our churches today is, I mean, Americans are just so individualistic.
Yeah.
But what the Bible is describing is this corporate thing. It's this, one to another thing. There's so many one another's in Scripture. And there's just a reality that when you come together and you share, whether you're mourning or you're sharing joy, it is powerful and it has a multiplicative energy to it. And so we should be thinking about not my individual experience, though I'm going to have those, and that's not necessarily bad, but what is happening communally with everyone
Yep.
in the room when this is happening. I think in today's world we've been critical of celebrity culture. There's a danger of one individual becoming the focus in the room.
Yeah.
When instead you have to be a servant of the collective, the communal aspect of what's going on in the room, so that people can obey, admonish one another with psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs. We're facilitating that. If I'm going to play a guitar, it's for the sake of facilitating my brothers and sisters being able to do that together.
Yep.
Right. So I think that modern challenge that we have, especially as we have people talk about like, well, I just go to church online. Like I've met people, my neighbors, they talk about that. We just go to church online. We're good. Like you're missing like a key component of what, back to God's ontological nature, love, in person, the incarnation, human to human, we're here together. That's at risk today.
Yep.
We've got to pay attention to, are we doing the one another's? Are we together?
Yeah. And there's something, I mean, I hope everybody listening has been to a concert, but there's something about going to a concert and being together with a body of people singing something that you don't get listening to the album.
Yes.
It's a different experience. And
very different
how much
experience.
more so, those are songs about heartbreak and nonsense. How much more so for the people of God to come together and sing the praises of an eternal God who loves us, who has laid down his life for us. And even just one of the things that I try to encourage our church to think about is when we come together and sing, and when we clap our hands, and when we raise our hands, we are taking practical steps and obeying the Lord in practical things that morning.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I like the idea of the concept of easy wins. And so those are easy wins. If you are struggling in every other area of your life and you sing and you clap and you raise your hands, you're doing something that God has asked you to do. And when we do that communally, when we don't give up meeting together, we are doing something that God has asked us to do.
Yep.
And it's just so natural. It's funny. I was noticing my daughters. I have 2 3-year-olds and a 1-year-old, and when they're excited about something, very naturally they clap and they yay.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, we're going to the park, yay, and they like clap because they're excited. And just like there's something about the physical expression of what we are doing. And even if you're not a clapper, try it. Doesn't take a lot of effort. Raise your hands. The Bible calls us to raise our hands, and there's something about that posture of raising your hands and fixing your eyes to God. And there's posturing there that can really help, and that are practical obedience steps that we can do.
Yeah. I mean, the physical expression that's captured in exhortations and expressions in Scripture, like you said, there's clapping. Obviously singing, shouting, dancing. There's people kneeling. There's expressions of hands being lifted, bowing, falling flat on your face because you think you're going to die, standing in awe. I mean, that's all biblical. And even
Yeah.
like the full range of human expression is represented, like, the Israelites singing so loudly because they're so exuberant. They're heard a long way away. I think the implication there is that
Yeah.
maybe miles away, they're so loud. And then there's just
Yep.
complete silence, laying prostrate in front of the Lord. Like, all of this is who we are as humans, and we should be
Yep.
expressing these things in various appropriate moments. Um, and I think one interesting thing about it is, like, back to that sort of expectation of an ecstatic moment every single time. I think sometimes our experience, or our desire for experience, can kind of become performative. And it's like, as soon as you
Mm.
step into that mode, uh, you're no longer worshiping, because you're
Yeah.
focused on your own self and your own ability, rather than just letting go and focusing on the gospel and grace and the person of God.
Yep.
Um, and I grieve for the people who show up on Sunday mornings in a performative state of mind, thinking today is the day, and then they leave disappointed because it
Mm.
wasn't. When
Yeah.
really all they needed to was let go and sit at the feet of Jesus.
One good place, maybe just as we're wrapping up, I think there's all kinds of other conversations here. And as I said, I think this is one of those things that there's all kinds of different facets and roads and stuff that we should dig into. I'm really happy with what we've pulled out, but I think one kind of final word on, just as a warning, is in 1 Corinthians in the love chapter. He says, if I speak in the voice of angels and have not love, then I'm nothing more than a clanging gong and a resounding cymbal. And how on the nose for worship leaders and worship teams, if we are not doing this from a spot of love, then we're nothing more than clanging gongs and resounding cymbals. And
Yep.
man, I think the whole motivation behind this, we've talked a lot about motivations on what we're doing and why we're doing it and how to do it. But the overarching drive should be love for each other. And I think
Yeah.
even maybe just as we end on this, I'm curious your thoughts on, I've heard a little bit of the debate of, is worship music for the lost or is it for the saved? Do we sing as part of a draw to pull people in? Or are we doing this for the benefit of the congregation and the church?
Is it 1 Corinthians 13 where Paul is talking about order?
I think that'd be 12 or 14.
12 or 14. That there's an implication, I think, in what we're doing, that I think scripturally, when a non-believer comes in and sees faith being expressed and sees the word of God going out and sees this congregational piece of what we're doing this together. It's the body.
Mm-hmm.
There is it's like the most beautiful evangelism, in my opinion, that there is. So for me, if we're having a prayer service and all we're doing is praying and we're not singing at all, I think we could be doing that for the non-believer in the room, partly as well, because what they're going to see is these people are sold out to this, and they're going to maybe think it's a little bit weird, but they're going to see it if it's real. If we actually truly believe it, they're going to see it, and they're going to understand, like, something else is happening here beyond what I can express or explain from just a materialistic sort of point of view. For me personally, I've been in a lot of conversations where people say, well, the worship service on Sunday is for believers. You need to do like a seeker-sensitive thing for non-believers or an outreach event or something like that, but don't ever focus on them. And I think it's just a false binary. I don't think it's scriptural. I think that, yes, a lot of the service and much of the service is for the believer and should build the believer up. And I think that as that's happening, the newcomer should feel both welcome and convicted. And so I think that the newcomer has to be in your mind as you're planning and as you're facilitating worship. necessarily be your focal point, but I don't know that necessarily anybody but the Lord should be your focal point. And the fact that you're trying to get everybody to sing. But I do
Yeah.
have a tendency, because I am more of a evangelist type person than I am probably a shepherd. And when I'm on stage in any capacity, one of my very first thoughts is always hospitality to the newcomer. So if we're going to do anything that's not necessarily like immediately accessible, maybe it's
Yeah.
we do Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing. I'm like, well, here's the word Ebenezer. We're going to sing it. It's a really old word, but this is what it means. That's going to help the believer or the non-believer. But sometimes I'm just like, I don't think this is going to be very accessible to a person who's coming in off the street and has no context for this. And it doesn't mean I'm going to dumb anything down for them. I'm just simply going to explain it.
Yeah.
And I might not explain it to the ability they're fully understanding. That's okay. But I just think in terms of hospitality, are we helping them understand what it is that we're doing, and are we helping them feel like, oh, I've just been invited into like this living room of this family, and it's kind of overwhelming, So I tend to lean that way, but I will also speak to believers in the midst of it. So I'm always like, I don't think there's a either or. It's both. It's both, and I think different people are going to be gifted different directions, and we'll express it differently. But that's why we have multiple worship leaders.
I think I'd actually lean on the other side probably more in my tendency. First Corinthians 14 was the one where it talks about a new believer coming into your congregation.
Yeah.
So
we should record these podcasts with Bibles on our laps. I gotta turn to it.
If you want to go read that, that's where it is. But you could also read 1 Corinthians 12, 13, and 14. I think it's all in line with what we're talking about.
Yeah.
But I think, and I guess just as a caution, maybe more than like a philosophical stance, I think there's a tendency in our churches to try to make it the biggest show on turf.
Yep.
And man, we're gonna drop. And I'm not necessarily speaking ill of this at all. If that's what you've decided to do, we have dear brothers and sisters that have done the same, and that's fine. But if the heart is, I'm going to have the best music here. I'm going to have the best music in our city. I'm going to have the best music, the best church music or whatever. If the heart is to compete, I think we're already losing. Because, and I think I've said this before, even on this podcast, so I apologize, but there's going to be hundreds and thousands of Instagram guitarists that are going to be better than me. And if you're coming to look for amazing guitar playing, I'm a decent guitar player, but there are much better people to go do that for. And if you're looking for amazing music, I love the music at our church. I think it's really fun and really sweet. But that's not what we're doing. Yep. And Jesus says they will know we are Christians by our love for each other. And I think that love can be expressed in our excellence. I think that love can be expressed in how we play music. I think that love can be expressed in all of these things, in the sound systems that we buy, in the quality of music, and all of those things. I think that can be an expression of love. But if we're doing it just as, if the goal is to save people because of our music and because of the quality of our music, I think that's possible to happen, and I think the Spirit can use all kinds of things, but I think that's missing the goal a little bit. I think people will not be impressed by what we're doing on Sunday. They're going to be impressed by the love that they see on Sunday. And so I think when a newcomer is, and I think that caution towards hospitality is really important. And I think that shout out in verse 1 Corinthians 14 is also really good, of Paul saying, hey man, when an unbeliever comes in and an ungifted person comes in, you have to make this somewhat accessible for them so that they know what's happening. And I think we have the same thing to do. We have to be hospitable to the world around us. But I think it's a heart thing. I think you can have two services that look exactly the same with different hearts. And I would say one is probably incorrect or wrong, and I would say the other one's fine, and they could be the exact same expression. And so I would just really caution against the heart, man. The silver bullet that Jesus gave us, we're always looking for the silver bullet in ministry. And is it house churches? Is it big churches, mega churches? Is it all these things that we look to do? the silver bullet that Jesus gave us is our love for each other.
Yep.
And if that's being expressed in our church services, then that's what's going to draw people. And I think if we flip that, I think that's where it can get a little wonky.
Yep. Yep. And back to the worship and the word idolatry that we brought up at the beginning. I think you can have an idol of always needing to be the fresh new thing. If every single week you're trying to one up the previous week in terms of the experience and the expression and the performance, I don't think you're focused on the right thing. Your eyes are focused on probably self, and they're probably focused on your ability to play or sing.
Yeah.
They're focused on a show, and I think we could maybe do a whole podcast episode on what I think is a false dichotomy of like this idea of that if you're performing, you're not worshiping, and excellence versus congregational singing, maybe authenticity. We probably shouldn't touch on it here because we'll go for another hour or more. But I do think that you can turn the performative aspect of it and that experiential desire that we have as musicians to create something just amazing and the wow factor, you can turn that into an idol.
Yeah.
But then you're not going to lead worship, because what are you worshiping there? You're worshiping that moment and that performance, and that's actually dangerous. It's dangerous. So another episode, we can talk about how that doesn't mean we throw out quality and good guitar solos.
Well, let's make that the next one, unless there's a crisis that we need to address.
Yeah, totally.
Cool.
Totally. Yeah, I'd love to talk about style maybe in the next one too, and volume, and there's so many things that people can get caught up in that I think can derail people and can derail the whole service. And musicians have to be cognizant of all of these different things, but in the end, if a volume or a style or a moment, if those things can derail my worshiping of God, I'm probably loving those things, the style, the performance, etc., the next new thing, more than I love God in the moment, So there's a lot more we could talk about, but I think we really did get to the heart of what we're supposed to be doing together and why music helps us worship God together.
Yep.
And I love talking about emotion a little bit in that too. There's more to unpack with that as well, but yeah, we'll go for another hour if we keep going.
Cool. Yeah. Look at us. We're getting professional. We're teasing next episodes and all this stuff.
Yeah.
So cool. Travis, anything you've been reading in the Word that's been encouraging?
Honestly, Isaiah. I was in Isaiah 57. We've been thinking about the fall season here at our church, and just our basically concept for the fall season is we're going to do evangelism. And one of the things that we've been seeing a lot is actually new people coming into the building on Sunday morning. It's like the front door just opened. For some reason, over the last decade, we haven't seen just random people coming in off the street, but it's happening now. And there's a lot of brokenness. There's a lot of just people who aren't even believers just coming in going, I need to start reading the Bible. My life doesn't make sense. And we've been just kind of thinking about what's next. And I was reading Isaiah 57, and it was verse 14 said, it shall be said, build up, prepare the way. Remove every obstruction from my people's way. And then it talks about how God, who inhabits eternity, his name is holy. He dwells in the high places, but also with him is who is of contrite and lowly spirit. He's going to revive the spirit of the lowly, revive the heart of the contrite. And really what I was thinking was maybe before we get into a season of expectation where we know people are coming, just to prepare our hearts. Do I have things in my life, or do we have things in our structures? I've been pushing this into thinking about church staff and things we're doing. Are there obstructions? Are there things in God's way or in his people's way if he's going to be doing something new with us this fall? So I've just been praying about that today. What is it, God, that you're pointing out to me here as we're supposed to prepare the way for whatever's next? and I don't want to get in the way of what you're doing. So if there are obstructions, things we need to repent of.
Cool. Yeah, we've been in Jeremiah. Read one of my favorite passages in Jeremiah 29, where Jeremiah writes a letter. A bunch of people have already been exiled to Babylon, and Jeremiah writes a letter to the exiles in Babylon, and basically encourages them just to stay and to try to bless the cities that they're in, and to plant gardens and to have kids and to keep doing life in the midst of their exile. And I think this is often taken out of context because we don't like to read encouraging verses in bad context, but that's where it says, "For I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper and not harm." And just I think one tweak I've had in the last year is really seeing us in our Christian walk as being in exiles. And I think the apostles really saw themselves as exiles, and Peter used that language a lot of foreigners and strangers here on the earth.
Yeah.
And I love that call of just to see ourselves as an exile and as citizens of a different place, and to try to bring good to the world around us. And I think I think it's really easy to lose sight of that. I think it's easy for me to lose sight of that. And I think a huge segment of the church in the U.S. has lost sight of that. Man, we're foreigners here, and there's a call, and God has good plans, but it's in the context of we get to go home someday. So or He's going to come.
I don't know if you can read my shirt
and restore.
Can you read my shirt here?
Yeah,
it says I am not at home here. Yeah, the microphone's in the way. But that's actually a song that Steve Parker wrote that we sing, and it's just super encouraging to me. I'm not at home here. This place is just a shadow of what's coming.
Yeah.
There's a weight of glory to be revealed that we just can't even comprehend right now.
Are you saying that's not the U.S.? All right. All right.
Ooh. Is that another episode?
That's probably a good place to end. Thanks all so much for listening. Travis, thanks for your time today. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Always appreciate talking to you, brother.
Yeah, you too.
So, we'll catch you guys on another episode. Thanks so much for tuning in today.
See you guys.